Pitch to Pro is the official podcast of Ozark United FC.
This will be our platform to tell our story about the club and the special place that we call home, Northwest Arkansas. This is a journey. We want to bring you along for the ride. We'll share what's going on behind the curtain, help educate the community at large about soccer, our league, and give updates on the progress of the club along the way. Together, we'll explore and unpack our journey to professional soccer, the magic that is NWA, our community, and talk all things soccer from on the pitch to behind the scenes, telling the story of our club. Pitch to Pro podcast is proudly sponsored by podcastvideos.com. Podcastvideos.com is Northwest Arkansas's premier podcast recording studio. Equipped with industry-leading equipment, the recording studio and services save you time, money, and hassle. They are dedicated to helping you create, record, and publish high-quality podcasts for your audience. Be sure to check them out today at podcastvideos.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Pitch to Pro podcast. It's Wes Harris, your host, managing director for Ozark United FC, Northwest Arkansas's pro soccer club playing in the United Soccer League. Today, we have an awesome conversation with my amazing guest, Mr. Ryan Williams. He is the assistant director of coaching at Sporting Arkansas and assistant head coach of our U20 Boys Academy program with Ozark United. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, it's glad to be here. I'm glad to be on.
Staying warm and dry and having fun in the snow today?
Oh, yeah. My son's at the age where he can really get around more. And so this morning, shoveled the driveway and got him in one of those sleds that have a chair in it and just pulling him around the neighborhood. So it's been good.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. He's already getting the snow experience early. Most people in Arkansas, NWA, got to wait a few years for that. So
I know it's been early for him. It's good.
Yeah, he's lucky. So, well, Ryan, you are, another NWA resident that has, pretty rock solid soccer background that just people may not know about. And we're very fortunate to have within our community and now, gone from player to coach, and we'll talk about that transition, but, still active in the game in the space, and very lucky to have you, in our area, continuing to pass on the love of the game and creating the right environment for our youth. And I know that you're very passionate about that. So we'll talk about that. But first and foremost, you have such a cool and unique background. Tell people a little bit about you, like where you grew up, where you're from, how did you find soccer in the lovely island life there in Hawaii?
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. So my parents always, it's funny because my son's 3 and I look at it, or he's going to be 3 turning actually tomorrow. And I look at it, I'm like, man, I was 3 when I started playing,
Yeah.
And so, 3 is when I started playing. And I think as I was doing it, I just grew a passion for it. I'm originally from Hawaii, and my family, my side of the family, they still live out there. And playing soccer, I just was growing this passion for this game. I loved it. I was always at the field, always watching my brother play. I was playing with him. And then as I was getting older, that passion started to grow into a dream to play professionally. And I was being on an island, being on a rock, at the time, I was very fortunate for a club to really move in to the island. That club was Rush Soccer, and really Rush was like a club that really gave me opportunities to play, or to pursue my dream. And being on a rock, it's hard to really get off that thing. It's hard to really be seen elsewhere, right? And so Rush had this connection, had this organization that really boosted me. So when I was 15, I moved to Colorado by myself. I lived with a host family. I played with Rush's academy out there. I played with them for 3 years. And after Colorado, I went to play with the coach now, Scott Marksberry.
Yeah.
And I played under him for 4 years. And in my summer times, I wouldn't go back home. I'd actually go to Charlotte, and I'd play with Charlotte Eagles out there. And in 2017, we won a PDL national championship. And wow, I'm very grateful for that. I scored a free kick. Every time I look at this field, I'm like, oh, that's a spot I scored a free kick on, And then after that, being in Charlotte, I got connected with my suit, which would be my future coach at the time, Troy Lassane, and from that, it kind of just when I was hitting my when I was in my senior year, finishing up that or finished that fall season, that's when Troy reached out and he wanted to have another look at me, and one thing led to another, and I was fortunate enough to be signing with New Mexico United in 2019, and yeah, well the 2018 actually December 2018, but 2019 season and then
19 season.
2020 season, yeah.
So talk
So
a little bit about, I mean, that's an incredible journey. Um, at what point in your kind of youth career did you start to think that, something within soccer might be possible for you? Did you feel that at all? Or were you just like, I just want to keep playing at a high level?
well for me, I mean, I was really young. I was probably about 8 years old or so when I remember I was like, I want to play. I want to play professionally. I want to be the best. I want to be the best, and that was
Yeah.
one thing I've always had in my head and in my mind is like I want to be the best. And I want to pursue it. I want to do something that no one else can do or no one else did. And being on an island, you don't hear of many pros. There are players who played professionally and they did it well and they played at high levels, but it's very, very few. And being at eight, I'm like 7, 8. I'm like, I want to be that. I want to be that guy. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was probably really young, and I within the people around me, the players around me, you're on an island, you know who the good ones are, and you know who the better ones are. But what you see is, and it's interesting, even coming into coaching with Ozark, um, you see as a young player, you look up, and I'm talking 8, 9 years old. You look up and you see, wow, these players trickle out. You see who like players are really, really good, 15, 16, 17. You know who they are, especially within that club. It was very connected. You train all at one spot. You know who the players are. You know who the good teams are. But then you
Yeah.
don't see them do anything after, or really what you see is the passion dies,
Yep.
right? So they hit 16 years old in Hawaii at the time. This was, gosh, this was probably what, like before 2010. So you're looking up and you're like, man, like they don't really go to college. Some do, and they're good enough, but they just didn't have that drive. Um, and
Yep.
so, yeah, it was a young age. It's funny, yeah, at a young age, yeah, I looked up, you can see ahead, and it's crazy. That's just a little kid. I coached 7 and 8 year olds at the club. I'm around them, like, man, I was that age, and I could see ahead, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and that's
so
that's that's part of what I was curious about, because you kind of had the extreme of it, but with literal geographic isolation, but also, you talk about players start to maybe lose that edge or like lose that drive or whatever it is, and they start to trickle out. And the laws of attrition within the game. But
yeah,
I was going to ask, like, and draw some corollaries to maybe a little bit of NWA, because people don't have that thing, that next step that's in
yeah,
sight, that's in vision,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you were one of the few, probably at least within your area and space, that had the drive without, you could see beyond the
yeah,
right in front of your face,
yeah. And
within
I think
your.
going on that, an important thing that I kind of learned through college, and college was a time where I really like harnessed my own craft. I really mastered it. I think it was inspiration. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I look back at my own playing career, like my youth career, really, the amount of inspiration I had around me was like massive. You know, Hawaii was always a spot where um, pros wanted to come down to run a camp. Like we had pros from Houston Dynamo, from DC United. I mean, Colorado Rapids. They would come down, or even Rush would bring pros down to Hawaii for a Christmas camp. So it was like constantly it may not necessarily be like, well, I guess during my time I was very fortunate, very blessed. Like during when I was playing, I'm always seeing pros. Every year I'm getting around pros. You know, and I'm just like, man, I want to be like them. And I hear them talking, I'm like, I want to be like them. I get around top coaches. Rush brought down coaches from Liverpool, and there's actually one who I talk with every now and then, but my family was very close with, and it's just again like there's that constant inspiration to me as a player,
Hmm.
of being around that is which like for me is like, man, I really wanted that, and part of my story is not only the what I did on the soccer side, but is what I went through on the adversity side. And this is probably you finding out for the first time, but I've had 14 surgeries in my life. From the age of 13 to 18, I had 11 surgeries. From 18 to when I finished playing, I had three more. And really, three of them were because of soccer. The other stuff was all hereditary. So really, I was given a hand, right? I was given cards that were just out of my control. And for me, going through playing in Hawaii, playing with the Rush, and being I was very grateful to have coaches who could really speak into me and kind of continue that drive. Like you have players around you that they go through knee surgeries and maybe they're able to hit three, but they hit three and they're done. They hit four, they're done. You rarely see
Yeah.
someone just kind of push through it, right? And I like, gosh, I was 14 going through I think my fourth surgery at the time, and it was one that was gonna like really rock my boat. So it was like, um, the inspiration and then almost that drive to I really want this dream. I want to do something that nobody else does. Right? It
Yeah.
just continue to push and push and push, and so like the soccer
Right.
journey, the adversity journey, that is all it kind of brings together into one story. So yeah,
Yeah, it's important, and it draws. I mean, you hear about this stuff all the time, right? I mean, um, not 11 surgeries, my goodness, but definitely, it's an unfortunate reality of the space is injury, and setbacks, and how do you
yeah,
overcome those? So many, so
and
much of what I love about sports is the life lessons that you draw from it, and the courage and strength that you draw from it.
yeah,
And you certainly are a great example of
and
that.
to bring that back to Ozark a bit and to Northwest Arkansas and the soccer here. Um, I'm seeing a soccer environment where again I think Scott's hit on this quite a bit, but at 15 it fizzles. You know, kids they don't feel that they can go further. I mean, we have talent in this area. There's talented kids in this area, and for me, it's like almost I have this platform. I've been given an opportunity for me to come in and say like not only push the level, push the training environment, the game environments, the teaching essentially to push them, but also to be able to speak into those things. I remember growing up in a place where it looked like there's nothing and players are fizzling out, and
Mhm.
I can almost be that place where I get to inspire, but at the same time, like I get to push, right?
Yeah,
Bring what I know, and yeah. So
yeah. No, I think, um, and that's part of hopefully what we can bring and bring about with change is not only the infrastructure for the pathway, right, but also the
yeah,
vision and the dream, right, and having that be visible within the community and tangible, right? These kids
yeah,
can go
tangible,
to
yeah,
games
for sure,
physically and
yeah,
see it, right, with their own
yeah,
eyes. And I think that ignites something within you as a player and a person, and gives you those goals. And so, and
yeah,
then how do we? Then we have to feed that dream and that goal with the infrastructure and the
100%,
path.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but talk to me a little bit about. I mean, you're one of the few, right, that have played a professional sport and played professional soccer in our league. Um,
Yeah.
what What's it like, man? Tell us, what's it like being a pro athlete in the USL Championship and you played with New Mexico United?
Yeah, man, this league is high level. Like, um,
Yes.
I remember coming in, and you get around so many players, and some of the players that I've played with are still playing, and
Mhm.
it's such a good league, high level league. Um, I got to play at New Mexico United in their first years, and so if I could tell you about that experience a bit, like for me, I was in college, I was a good player. You know, I did some good stuff in college. Um, Going into the championship, you know, every player going in as a you have a big head. You get humbled a bit when you get in because there's these pros who every player's as good as you, and some are probably better. You know, they're
Yeah.
better at executing. Um, their percentages or consistency is way higher than yours. Their IQ is way higher than yours. Their experience of it is way higher than yours. Yeah, coming in, it's every player you're playing with, especially the ones who've played in college, and some of them haven't because they skipped it. Though every player's played in college has just as many awards as you, you know, and they've been around the block even as you have, right? And it is a humbling experience, but it's also like like for me, I enjoyed the level of play that I had with New Mexico United. Um, it college was a high level for me, but even
Mhm.
going like the organization level that the USL Championship brings, um, it it was like it was really good for me, and I really enjoyed being there. It is eye opening too, like the levels like you go from college into the championship, the jumps. It's eye opening how sophisticated the levels are and the organization is, right? And even more so when you're playing against like in the Open Cup, you know, I got to we had a decent run in the Open Cup, and I got to hop into a game against Minnesota United, and I'm like,
Yep.
man, like playing against guys in the MLS I watch on TV, and I'm like, oh wow, this is next level, you know. Um, and so, well, it's interesting too. Well, this is kind of different, but with New Mexico United, they were so involved in their community, kind of like what we're intending to do. That's the
Yep.
goal. It's tangible, right? I remember walking into. I never saw myself as a popular player. I mean, I didn't play as many minutes. I got some good minutes as a rookie, and I got good minutes as my second year. But I never really saw myself as like, "Ah, I'm popular, you know. And you walk into a Target, and then all of a sudden people are calling your name. And I'm like,
Yep.
me? Like you're talking to me? You know? But
Yep.
it was such a cool thing to go around and how a community takes on the team, you know, and
Mhm.
players walk around the community and are engaging, right? It was very that experience was really cool. So
That's awesome. And
yeah,
talk,
any other questions there? Like I can
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
try to explain that.
I wanted to build on something you talked about, the difference between college and professional, right? In terms of skill level, but I think, and what I've heard, I don't know because I've not played on both levels like you have, but a lot of times what you will hear is that the difference between like a good player and an elite player that makes that jump is someone that has it up here, but then also they execute the little things flawlessly every time. Is that
Yeah.
like
Well,
similar in your
okay.
experience, or
One
how
hundred
would you
percent.
describe that difference?
I would. It's kind of spot on for me. So, I watch for me, and I've coached at John Brown University. I was an assistant coach there. Um, in my time as a coach, the amount of games I've watched, the amount of leagues I've watched, it's been crazy. My wife probably doesn't like it because I watch games all the time. I watch
Yeah.
Championship, I watch League One, I watch MLS. I've been watching the Prem, but for what I do is like the Prem is so it's next level. It's so sophisticated, you know,
Yeah.
and those players are just one of a kind. They're one of a kind players, you
World
know, all
class.
gathered
Yeah.
in one league. Um, and what I've seen is, and it kind of, I want to say it this way before I go to my experience. and the whole college professional thing. Um, each level is kind of marked in looks like it's marked. It looks like it's marked in different ways, right? Like in the Prem, you have guys who could change a game at any second. Any second, they can change a game, and those guys are like crazy athletes. They're crazy with the ball, high IQ. MLS is kind of in that same boat, maybe lower, but it's very much similar. I mean, you could look at the guys coming in, and in the championship, you do see a player every now and then that changes the game, and they're crazy dynamic, they're crazy athletic. Oftentimes, those players, I mean, if they have successful seasons, they get moved up. But what you see more in the championship is the organization of each team. They're so organized. The details are because that's where the game's won and lost. The team who makes it almost looks like the team who makes the least mistakes is probably the team going to win the game, because there's not a guy who's going to dribble 4 players. There's not a guy who's going to like take on the team and give me the ball, let me do the dribbling. There's not a guy who's necessarily going to smash a goal from 35 yards out every several games.
Right.
So it's coming to your point. Like from what I've seen, there are players in college who have crazy ability. Their feet is really, really good, and maybe even sometimes better than some players in the championship. But does that put them in it? Not necessarily, because the IQ is not quite as high as the guys in the championship. Like the IQ is everything. They're the game intelligence, the adapting, the thinking through the game. Because it's crazy. Even adapting to each year. Like the ones who adapt and the ones who can think about the game in that way. Those are the players who stay. Because they're constantly finding ways to make impacts. I mean, at that level, the scouting reports, gosh, they know you as a player. And if you can't find ways around that, you can't think through ways around that, you get stuck. You get stuck as a player, right? And kind of going on to your point, that it's the details that matter. The details that matter. The details that really, I think, sets players apart, sets pros apart from college players. People want fancy feet, which is good. You better be you better be extraordinary with your feet, if that's the case. But really, like knowing when to get getting on a half turn, receiving the ball back foot, checking your shoulder, checking your shoulder 3-4 times before you even receive the ball, knowing 2-3 passes in advance, like those are things that all pros know. Like being it for me, I think it's stuff that's kind of said at every level, and then you come to the margins, and the professional environment, the margins are just so tight. It's so little, like, you know what I mean? And it's those margins that like really set the players apart, right? So,
and I tell this to my son all the time. I don't push him, but I ask him the question, and I start bringing this concept into his head. Like the players who only play soccer at scheduled practices, like if that's your journey and that's what you want to do and that's what you want out of it, and then great. And you're going to have a fun time doing it. And hopefully you got a great coach that's going to create a good environment and a good experience. Fantastic.
Yeah.
If you are a player that wants to continue to elevate their game and continue to push the level and continue to get to the next step and continue to be, the one starting in minutes and all of that stuff and continuing to evolve, if that is what you're aspiring for, which my son says he does, then just playing soccer at scheduled practice times with your club, maybe 2 hours a week, 2.5 hours a week, plus games.
Yeah.
Not going to do it. Not going to do it, my friend. When you start hitting a certain age group, like you're going to start to get leapfrogged by the players that maybe 2-3 teams below you that are putting in that work. And we already have this in our age group, a couple players that are a couple teams below down that would knock off a few of the first team players right now if we held evals.
Yeah, you know,
And
even when I was
start
growing
to
up,
see,
the time that a pro gets every week is 16 hours a week, roughly around there. You know,
wow.
like if you're getting 2 hours, 3 hours of training, maybe one game, like you're not, it's not cutting it. You know, like the type of training that the amount of training is there for a reason, right? Like I think that's um thing that's kind of always been like 16 hours a week. Like that's at a pro level. And then you start to go into like, what does your training look like that's outside of practice, right? Because like
Yeah.
if we're saying, and I think, it, well, I'm saying that IQ in a way sets players apart. Obviously, you need good feet. You got to control the ball. You got to pass the ball. You got to be able to finish. You got to do your job well. No, that's not like no doubt. But if IQ sets a player apart, then if you're doing work that kind of puts aside IQ and like game intelligence, well, you're gonna be a
Mhm.
good player, you know. But like really, when you get into the higher levels, you're gonna play with players and be like, dude, like you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like your decision making is
Yeah.
not very good, you know. And so it's like you have to bring in decision making. You have to bring in maybe imagination. And so if you're training on your own, like I don't know if you can really make decision makings on your own, but you could imagine. You could have a good
Mhm.
imagination. And you know,
Yeah.
I tell coaches around me and even players that I work with, like, you know, when I was growing up, the soccer was on my mind like all the time. Like I'm receiving the ball with my chest. I think I'm Zlatan. But, you know, like I receive the ball with my thigh or my foot out of the air. I imagine I see a picture of Iniesta in my head. You know, and it's like constantly when I'm training, like that stuff's always like it's just like gear that's always spinning. You know, and so um yeah, it's like 3 hours. So if you if that's what you want, that's fine. Like that's all good, no
Yeah.
problem. You know, but if
Yeah.
that passion develops and you want more, well then you gotta give more, right? So
Mhm. Exactly. 100%. And, you know, I think the other way to look at it too is, especially at the pro level, what you started talking about with the hours. I mean, people will hear that and they'll say, wow, that's a lot of training. But let's take a step back for a second. This is your job. We,
yeah,
you know, let's look at the workforce, 40-hour work week, right? In the US,
yeah.
like everybody thinks, and if anybody is in school and about to go out into the workforce, I have a rude awakening for you. It's not 40 hours in most professional
Yeah.
jobs. Anyway, but to your point, you were talking about it. 16 hours is like the physical training, like actually scheduled
Yeah.
practices. Then
Yeah.
there's taking care of your body.
Recovery, like you got
That's
recovery weights, yeah, stretching, icing, eating well,
all
like
that
all
stuff.
the other stuff that kind of comes in. So, yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's interesting like because you know,
Mhm.
like the passion for the game is so important. You know, like I haven't been last year. I've been around a player who they've hated playing from a
Mhm.
young age, or like it's always starts with passion and it starts with enjoyment that keeps them in it, right? Like there's players who their salaries aren't very good, but they just love playing, you know, and
Yep.
they'll put out the grind just because they love it, you know. Um,
Yep.
and so it like that passion is so important, especially in an environment where there's, you know, in the professional line, there's high pressure because you gotta perform, right? You gotta
Mhm.
score goals, you gotta assist, you gotta create plays, you gotta defend. If you get beat, geez, you don't play. You know,
Yeah.
if you get beat, if you get
Everybody's
beat,
vying for your spot,
ev-
right?
everything matters. You know, like every action matters, and if you don't have that passion, if it's just a job to you, like if that's what it is, then you don't stay long. You know.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more, and I think you do find that and see that, and you know, to your point, if you're making it to that level, um, you know, chances are you have a strong passion for the game. Otherwise, you know, those onesie twosies that you find that may not, you're not seeing them
Yeah.
in a spot for very long. One, personally, but two, they're not going to have the level of commitment or drive, right, to stick around, and or the attitude,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah,
be a
and
good team, have somebody like that in the locker room.
it,
Like,
kind of you saying that makes me think about even from my own experience. Um, yeah, I only played 2 years, but part of it was because the demand on your body that you take as a pro, gosh, it goes way higher than a college athlete. And it was as a college athlete, like for what I've been through for my adversity, like yeah, I handle it, and it was fine for me. But the moment I jumped into the professional environment and like the toll that it takes on the body, like
yeah,
if college was hard, the fitness and stuff was hard, the weights were, whatever it is, the demand was hard. You'll get into a professional environment, and I'm sure it's probably even higher the levels you go. USL Championship, MLS, overseas, Bundesliga, the Prem, whatever it is. I'm sure the demand is just more and more and more. So if it's just like a job, say college is a job or club, I just show up and play. Like parents make me play, or they're always on your butt about it. They're the
yeah.
one who puts pressure on you. Like if that's it, like I just don't see how it really moves into the next level. Or it can, but lasting, I don't know.
Yeah, not very sustainable, to be sure. Well, Ryan, thank you so much, man, for joining me for this episode and giving us some insight. I mean, that's just, it's so cool again to have someone with your playing experience and background in our area and a part of, instilling the passion and love and joy. And so that we don't find players like we just talked about, and hopefully ones that have that love of the game and helping to create that environment. So thank you for everything that you're doing, and appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for this episode of Pitch to Pro. Appreciate everybody joining us. Make sure to follow us on all of our socials at Pitch to Pro and check out even more content wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and more. Until next time, cheers, Northwest Arkansas. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Pitch to Pro podcast. Be sure to tune in again in 2 weeks for the next installment, and check out the Stoppage Time series for a recap of today's episode. Be sure to find us at Pitch to Pro on YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Until next time, Northwest Arkansas, cheers.